Yes, Internet, I admit it. I'm a massive fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, and I'm not a new fan either. I've been playing these games since I was a little kid. I even still have my original copy of Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast, and I've been keeping up with the series on the regular ever since. And, if you can't tell by my helmet, I am also a fan of Shadow the Hedgehog. As a character, not necessarily the game from 2005. Although I do have to admit I have a little bit of a soft spot for it. Earlier this year, Sega released the first trailer for Sonic X Shadow Generations, and with it, they proclaimed 2024 as the Year of Shadow. Suck it, Luigi. This marks the character's first significant appearance and role in a game since Sonic 06. That was almost 20 years ago. And it's also his first actual playable experience since 2017's Sonic Forces and its DLC Episode Shadow. Now with the announcement came the delisting of the original game from Steam. It is still available on a bundle if you desire, but it is going to cost significantly more. The question remained whether this remaster was actually going to satisfy fans this time. Sega and Sonic have had a rocky history with remasters, especially with recent titles like Sonic Origins and Sonic Colors Ultimate. And with Shadow Generations essentially acting as the long-awaited and desired DLC for Sonic Generations, was this wait really going to be worth it? Now I don't know about you guys, but this game's hype for me was palpable. Sega, like all their recent releases, put out a series of animated shorts that set the stage for the new title. And I have to say, they knock it out of the park every single time. The animation is top notch, it's beautiful to look at, it's action packed, and it's got that frame skipping that makes impacts feel so much better. I love that they do this. And it starts by giving us the backstory of Shadow as well as setting up the events of the next game. Sega also fulfilled a dream of mine that I've had since 2012 of finally getting Casey Lee Williams to do vocals for a Sonic song. If you don't know who Casey Lee Williams is, she is known for being the vocal talent behind the soundtracks for Ruby by Rooster Teeth, alongside her father Jeff Williams. And I have wanted the two of them to work on a Sonic project since Ruby premiered. So thank you Sega for at least allowing her to lend her vocals to the Sonic franchise. They also had this amazing looking collector's edition from Limited Run Games, and I wish I could have gotten my hands on it. I still have my old Sega Dreamcast. I mean, look at this thing. I would have loved to have this alongside my Sonic Mania statue from that game's collector's edition. Also, real quickly, did any of you guys ever get those Sonic AI brain rot videos that started popping up on like my YouTube and TikTok page about a month before this game's release? I can't tell why, but it was so perfectly timed for this thing to start blowing up. I still can't get enough of them. But the game's been out for, Jesus Christ, it's been over a month already? I need to speed these videos along. Let's dig into it, starting with Sonic Generations. Quick spoiler warning for Sonic Generations. I know it's 13 years old, but still. Sonic's friends are throwing him a surprise birthday party, but before he can finish his birthday chili dog, the Time Mirror shows up, captures all of his friends, and knocks Sonic unconscious, but for some reason doesn't kill him. Instead, Sonic wakes up in white space and makes his way to Green Hill Zone, and from here, the game follows a very basic structure. Complete both acts of each stage as both classic Sonic and modern Sonic, save one of Sonic's friends, do a few challenges to unlock boss keys, and at the end of each era, you have a boss fight, rinse and repeat until you get the final boss of the Time Eater, which, surprise surprise, it's Dr. Eggman and his classic version behind it all. In terms of changes, some of the cutscenes have been changed from the original. Some I think are good, while others seem a bit out of place. Ian Flynn from the comics and the writer behind Frontiers came to rewrite some of these scenes, and his love of references for the series' history is still very prominent. For longtime Sonic fans like myself, it can be nice to hear them reference the time stones from Sonic CD or other things, but it can also be seen as reference for reference's sake. Some of these changes though just flat out make no sense. For instance, when you rescue Knuckles as classic Sonic in the original game, Knuckles comments on Sonic's more round shape compared to his modern counterpart. Sonic touches his belly as a reaction.
Did a good job back there. Hey, did you gain weight?
But now, Knuckles asks where the rest of Angel Island is, while Sonic has the same reaction as before, making it seem like Sonic ate the rest of Angel Island.
Thanks, Sonic. Now then, tell me, where is the rest of my island?
Small issues like this could be easily forgiven if they didn't already reanimate some of the cutscenes in the game. In the beginning of the original game, Sonic is holding Amy away from him as he talks to Tails. But now, Amy is excitedly waiting for Sonic to wrap up his conversation to hand him some cupcakes, making her characterization more in line with how she's portrayed nowadays versus how she was back then. A change that I'm all for, but it leaves the question of if they were going to reanimate these scenes to begin with, why not reanimate all of them to make them fit modern standards and have this new consistency? One big omission to the script is that back in the original game of Sonic Generations, classic Sonic was from the past, but in Forces he was retconned to be from a parallel universe or different dimension, only for this story to retcon it back again so that classic Sonic is from the past again. Do they not want to acknowledge Forces in any way? No, because Frontiers used the events of Forces as a springboard for character development like Tails, who had lamented how he was a coward when facing chaos. Maybe I'm the only one who noticed, or I'm the only one who cares, but with all the references to establish some continuity in the series done in Frontiers and this game, it just seems weird to double back on this. Like, why would you go back and redo a character's entire backstory? Okay, you made your point. Nah, the biggest changes come from the voice lines in every cutscene being redubbed, leading to some weird voice direction. It feels like they wanted Sonic to be more like his version of Frontiers rather than the more cheery and energetic version that we had in the original Generations. They probably would be a bigger deal if the story of Generations is actually what really mattered in the game, but it's not. It's all about the gameplay here. I just wish that there was a way to toggle the old voice lines and cutscenes so that way fans could pick which version they wanted. I'm not going to go too deep into these changes. There are plenty of comparisons on YouTube for you to look at, plenty of rants, and plenty of people being mad about it. In terms of gameplay, Sonic Generations is just like how you remember it back in 2011, for better and for worse. 2D stages with classic Sonic and a mix of 2D and 3D stages for modern Sonic. In terms of a quality of a remaster, it's a bit underwhelming. Alongside a simple upscale to 4K, which was always available on the PC version, the few additions to the base game are few and far between. The game on home consoles now runs at a solid 4K 60 frames per second, except on the Switch where that bitch is still locked at 30 frames per second. But 4K 60 on home consoles isn't bad. But Shadow Generations runs at 4K 120 frames per second. Why can't this one? Engine limitations? In the stages, alongside the 5 red star rings, each stage now has 3 Chow that you can find in each act. They don't really do anything besides hang out in the white space hub world around their respective stages, but they are well hidden and they can incentivize you to explore, and they give veteran players something new to look for. You do get an achievement for finding them all, it's just a shame that you don't get anything else for the effort. Speaking of Chow, Sega, where is my Chow Garden mobile game? Please, you are sitting on a pile of money. I want it. Monetize it like everything else and you will have a bona fide hit on your hands. Although Sega did acknowledge the Chow Garden in the new Sonic trailer, so hey, maybe it's not out of the cards. One other new feature is the addition of the Drop Dash from Sonic Mania, which would be a neat addition, but it's basically useless. For classic Sonic, it's nowhere near as powerful as the classic Spin Dash, and modern Sonic, it's redundant considering how he has access to Boost. Not to mention the fact that it takes a skill point from the shop to equip, whereas neither of the other two abilities do. Default controls are switched from the old to the new Frontier style with Boost on the right trigger, but the classic controls can be easily switched to in the menus if you just want the older experience. All in all, the game plays just like how you remember it, and it remains as one of the greatest 3D Sonic games of all time. only now with more modern accessibility and a clean coat of paint on it. Classic Sonic on full 2D stages, modern Sonic is a mix of 3D and 2D, same stages, same boss fights, same challenges, and same horrible Time Eater final boss. It's all here. I just wish that there were more to this remaster. Was having new music too much to ask for? It would have been a nice bonus for those of us jumping back in after 13 years. I understand that this game was to celebrate Sonic's past up to this game's initial release, but a few stages and songs celebrating newer games like Lost World, Mania, or Frontiers, would that have been too much to ask for players? They could have even excused it by saying that they were stages from Sonic's future like they do later in Shadow Generations. Maybe I'm just being selfish, but I can't help it. I would love to go through Studiopolis in 3D, but enough about what could have been. Let's take a look at what we got. Oh yeah, now on to the real reason to pick this game up. Finally, after years, we get a playable Shadow that isn't just a reskinned Sonic going through the same stages, but a whole new movement and combat system along with his own original story. Again, another spoiler warning for Shadow Generations. Taking place alongside Sonic Generations, Shadow is having nightmares about his past, and he gets the gut feeling that something is happening on board the Space Colony Ark. So, with the help of Rouge, Shadow steals a spaceship from Gun, one he apparently could have just asked for, and Shadow's feelings are confirmed when Gun detects a biosignature on board the Space Colony. Rouge later calls him asking why he's not back yet and why he's not at Sonic's birthday party. After seeing a strange anomaly, we enter the first stage, the Space Colony Ark from Sonic Adventure 2. And we find that Black Doom is back and trying to take control of Shadow to use him as the ultimate weapon. It's here we also find out that Black Doom has a real hard-on for Radical Highway. Doom sends Shadow to Radical Highway every single time he shows up, and I understand why they chose Radical Highway in a gameplay sense, as it was how Shadow was introduced via gameplay, but wouldn't Westopolis make more sense, at least story-wise, between these two? Especially considering how many times you have to play through that level just to get to the final ending of that game. In reality, it's probably because they didn't have any HD assets of Westopolis, but they do have plenty of city assets already, so why is it always Radical Highway and nothing else from Shadow the Hedgehog? Following the Space Colony Ark level, Shadow finds the fake Chaos Emerald Tails tried to trick Eggman with from Sonic Adventure 2, and that is when the Time Eater attacks. From there, Shadow is sent into his own white space hub world with a Black Doom moon hovering above. But instead of it being a 2D hub world like in Sonic Generations, it's a fully 3D zone with plenty of pathways, hidden collectibles, challenges, similar to the open zones in Sonic Frontiers, just more condensed and refined, especially without the extreme pop-in that Sonic Frontiers struggled with. Shadow isn't alone in this hub world, as we quickly find out. He quickly finds Gamma, spots Gerald Robotnik and Maria across the way, and is quickly followed up by Orbot, Cubot, Big the Cat, and is eventually joined by Rouge the Bat. It's here that Shadow goes through the stages from both his past as well as his future. From the start, due to the fact that Shadow has both the fake emerald and the real emerald, until Sonic beats the crap out of him and takes the fake emerald for himself, Shadow has access to Chaos Control. Once the gauge at the bottom of the screen is filled up, either by killing enemies, hitting power capsules, Shadow can activate Chaos Control and freeze time for up to 5 seconds. This ability will also freeze your in-game timer, allowing you to get a head start or catch up on levels in order to attain the S rank. Doesn't sound like much, but in a game as fast as Sonic and Shadow, it can mean a lot. Chaos Control allows you to freeze projectiles in the level, which can also open up new pathways or even bypass and freeze certain stage hazards when used and timed correctly. In some areas, it can even allow you to take these special pathways that skip complete sections of the level. That's not the only power that Shadow has access to. Along the way, Shadow gains access to these new Doom powers using his equivalent of portal gears called Doom Gears that he gets throughout the stages and are activated throughout the hub world. Doom Spear, which allows Shadow to shoot small projectiles and stun enemies and activate triggers through the level. Sort of functions as a way to give Shadow a gun without actually giving him a gun. Because God knows, we would have never wanted that shit again.
You're gonna make the right choice when it matters the most.
Never fucking mind. Doom Blast, which allows him to launch enemies into the air, kick them away, and teleport to them to reach new areas. Very situational, but is also able to be used in stages to gain access to different pathways. Doom Surf, a power that activates automatically when Shadow hits the water, allowing him to traverse over water at speed. It even has some sideswipe attacks that can be used against enemies and bosses. Doom Morph, which turns Shadow into an Inkling from Splatoon. To activate it, you have to hit these morph balls, and Shadow can swim on any surface with this black Doom goo, and even swing from morph ball to morph ball like Spider-Man. This is by far my least favorite of the Doom powers. While it is useful for speedruns and S ranking levels, I find the controls to be very finicky, and I had to look up exactly how to use this power efficiently because the game just straight up doesn't tell you. The game never tells you that if you hit the jump button mid-swing, Shadow will launch straight up from the direction that he's in and catapulting him in that opposite direction. Knowing this is essential for getting all the collectibles in the level and making use of this power to its fullest ability. Think of it more as a slingshot rather than a Spider-Man swing. And finally, we have Doom Wings. These give Shadow the ability to fly, open up new pathways and traversal in levels. You need 50 rings to activate it, but you are impervious to damage while using it. With these new powers, not only does Shadow grow in power, but due to his shared DNA with Black Doom, Doom gets more powerful as well, culminating in Black Doom's plan to take control over Shadow as his ultimate weapon. But because Shadow's already been through this shit once before, he uses his new powers. Shadow takes out Black Doom, blowing him up, presumably for good, but we'll see in the future. With Black Doom defeated and Sonic beginning to restore the timeline, white space begins to fade, and with that, Gerald and Maria begin to fade away, destined to go back to their own time. Shadow has to learn to let go of them one final time, allowing the events of the past, no matter how tragic they may be, to play out. Shadow returns to the events of Sonic Generations alongside Rouge with a heavy heart and a tear in his eye. The story of this game is a lot more dramatic and emotional and heartfelt than Sonic Generations, and it fits in line with how Frontiers handled its storytelling and characters, but it sure beats the hell out of Sonic's story here. While the storyline is quite simple, Black Doom is back and Shadow has to kick his ass to return to his own time, but the character moments and dialogue here are much better handled. We even get a genuine smile from Shadow here, not just like a shit-eating grin, but a full-on smile because he's genuinely happy to be back with Maria again. He also did smile when he saw Big the Cat though, but come on, can you blame him? But that smile makes saying goodbye to her again that much more painful, and the single tear shed be that much more impactful for not only us as an audience to believe it, but for Shadow's character growth. All the performances here are amazing. Except for Rouge. Her voice just sounds off to me.
Whatever.
Kirk Thornton is the new voice of Shadow the Hedgehog, and he is easily the best voice actor that the character has had in years, maybe ever. He previously voiced Orbot, and while he continues that voice in this game, his portrayal as Shadow feels the way it should feel. It also has a lot to do with Ian Flynn's writing.
No more mistakes. This time, I will crush every last one of them.
Shadow, no!
Maria?
It breaks my heart to see you so full of anger.
The characters all felt deep and not one-dimensional, while also providing a solid story that is arguably one of the best stories in the Sonic game ever. It's just a shame that throughout the whole story, Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, is hardly ever referenced. Outside of Black Doom, his army, and some music tracks, we get close to nothing from the 2005 game. Maria and Jill Robotnik are also so quickly sidelined in the story. Yeah, there's some flavor text from characters in the hub world, but these characters are a huge part of Shadow as a character. As soon as they're introduced, they're basically sidelined. Was it too difficult to implement some sort of communication between these three while Shadow was in stages? This is also the first time that Maria's disease is ever referenced in-game. Before now, the only time we had ever heard about it was in the manual for Sonic Adventure 2. But what is here is absolutely fantastic, and in the end, the best criticism I can give for any game is just that I wish that there were more of it. But this is a video game after all, and story is only part of the puzzle. Gameplay is how a video game lives and dies. Much like Sonic Generations, Shadow Generations has 2 acts for each zone. Unlike Sonic Generations, while one act is completely 2D, the other is completely 3D with no mix of the two in sight, allowing for a much more balanced game type than Sonic Generations had. From here on, the game follows a pretty similar formula to Sonic Generations, with some frontiers sprinkled in. Play each zone, complete challenges, earn keys for boss fights, find 3 gears in each stage, and unlock collectibles in the hub world, rinse, repeat until you reach the end credits. We start off on the Space Colony arc, and immediately the level design is very reminiscent of classic Sonic games in Sonic Generation. While there are linear pathways for people who just want to play the game and get through it, there are plenty of side paths and hidden passages for those of us who like exploring. And much like in Sonic Generations, I feel like I'm still going to find new pathways 10 years from now. See an enemy off to the side hidden away? Attack him and he can lead you to a different pathway where you can possibly find more of the collectibles. After that, we have Real Canyon from Sonic Heroes, Kingdom Valley from Sonic 06, Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces, Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers, and finally Radical Highway from Sonic Adventure 2. A level that by the time you get to it feels played out, and I wish they had added some variety to Black Doom's levels. These aren't one-to-one recreations. Much like in Sonic Generations, while level aesthetics are familiar, the level designs are completely new. Unlike in Sonic Generations, the involvement of Black Doom throws a wrench into all of this, and in some levels you end up going into a Doctor Strange-like world where Black Doom is in control. This leads to some breathtakingly beautiful moments despite the fact that it's always based on Radical Highway. Grinding rails in the Space Colony arc? Not anymore, you're suddenly transported to Radical Highway sliding down buildings facing Black Doom's army, only for Black Doom to taunt you before returning you back to the main level. Boss fights from previous Sonic games also make their return. The first boss we have is the Bio-Lizard from Sonic Adventure 2 in his first form, where the fight plays out pretty similarly to how it did back then, but with some new added flair. You basically just wait for him to slam his tentacles down, you beat up the tentacles and make your way to his power core, then you win the fight. The second boss is Metal Overlord from Sonic Heroes, easily my least favorite boss fight in the game. It requires a lot of the use of the Doom Surf power, and the boss relies too much on that hurry up and wait style of encounter, making S ranks a big pain in the ass. This is definitely a fight where timing of chaos control is crucial. The third boss fight is Mephiles from Sonic 06. This fight has several phases, most of which focus around the Doom Morph ability. This is probably my favorite encounter in the game, mostly stemming from the fact that Mephiles wants so badly to exist, since Sonic 06 essentially erased itself from the timeline, and Shadow just stomps him back out of existence.
There is no future for you. Ever.
Kinda wish Shadow Roundhouse kicked him like he did to Silver in that game to finish him off, but I may just be a masochist for that. This culminates in the final encounter with Black Doom. Sorry, Neo Devil Doom. This fight forces you to use all the Doom powers you have gathered throughout the game, and it includes plenty of those high action, high adrenaline moments that we got from Frontiers fights. Outside of the stages, we have the White Space Hub World, which feels like a refined version of the islands in Sonic Frontiers. Plenty of hidden collectibles like chests that contain artwork, journal entries, and music that you need gears from stages to unlock. There are also these machine parts scattered throughout the hub world that you can give to Orbot and Cubot so they can build a rocket ship to escape. They give you some more art to unlock, but the final reward is underwhelming, along with finding out that the rocket is just a cuckoo clock. And the controls in this game, oh my god, the controls. It's utter perfection. It almost slipped my mind during this review because it felt so intuitive. Shadow's speed isn't nearly as fast as Sonic, but his mid-air controls, his double jump, his teleportation to enemies as a replacement for the homing attack all feels perfect and are easily the best the boost formula has ever felt. I genuinely hope this is how future games control. In terms of post-game content, after the credits roll, there are some more challenges, some new S rank times on previous stages since you now have access to the Doom Wings on all of them. New and more difficult stage challenges, harder boss fights, enough stuff to keep you coming back for a little while, but most of which will only take you a few attempts, especially if you're a veteran player. Now, it wouldn't be a Sonic game if the soundtrack wasn't amazing, and I'm glad to say that the music here is intense, it's energetic, but I just don't think it's Shadow. I do like EDM and all the stage remixes feel great. It fits the stages, but damn it, I want my edgy rockin' metal tracks. Those are still here if you unlock them, and just like in Sonic Generations, you could pick any song you've unlocked to play in the stages, and the default tracks are all good, and I will definitely be adding some of them to my workout playlist. I just wish that there were more of those metal ballads, especially since we now have a talented metal vocalist like Casey Lee Williams contributing. Little nitpicks like useless collectibles, a slightly spotty soundtrack, and the reuse of level themes all pale in comparison to the overall package being simply amazing. That's all I can say about this game. It's simply amazing and one of the best 3D Sonic games, the best boost formula game, and arguably one of the best Sonic games of all time. Well, the Year of Shadow looks to be an amazing success so far, and it's not even over yet. The third Sonic movie is only just a few weeks away, and if this movie turns out half as good as it's looking, this may be the best movie of the year for me, and 2024 may go down as the best year ever for the Sonic franchise. Speaking of the year, I hope to have at least one more video out before the end of the year. By the time this video comes out, I'll be well underway on my video review of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Well, that's all I got. Hope to see you guys next time. Hope to see you guys in the theater. And by the way, I'm definitely cheering when that little girl gets shot, and you can't fucking stop me.